Good morning and welcome to St Michael's Catholic College. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to the start of our open days and open evening. This year, these are taking place virtually as due to the current pandemic, we're not able to have visitors on site. However, our team have worked very hard to put together a comprehensive set of events over the next week and a half so that you can find out more about the college, what St Michael's is about, and actually you get a chance to ask any questions you have, because we've also got, as well as my talk this evening, some opportunities for live question and answers with staff who are overseeing key areas at the college. So this morning is about an opportunity for you to find out more about teaching and learning and our provision for the more able, and there'll be some information provided about the admissions process. But I would encourage you to have a look at our portal, have a look at all of our online events taking place over the next week and a half, and sign up for as many as possible, and particularly make sure that you are able to watch the full talk this evening from myself. If you aren't able to watch live at 7 o'clock, there'll be an opportunity to watch the talk, and it's recorded. And there's also opportunities for you to hear from our students over the next week and a half. So this morning I'm going to hand over to Miss Casey. She's Assistant Principal, and she's going to talk about provision for more able and for teaching and learning at St Michael's Catholic College.
Thank you, Miss Corcoran, and welcome to everybody, parents, carers, and potentially prospective Year 6 students. If you're here as well, welcome to you. As Miss Corcoran said, my name is Miss Casey, and I am one of the assistant principals here at St Michael's. Part of my remit is to look after the quality of teaching and learning across the college. That's things that our staff are doing, but also what our students are doing as well. But I also look after provision for our most able students college-wide. And obviously one person can't look after all of that. We have things built into our systems to enable that every single student at St Michael's is stretched and challenged appropriately. So I'm just going to show you how that works visually, and show you the 3 levels at which we plan provision for our most able into our college setup. So what you'll see first and foremost is that the bedrock of what we do is our curriculum and our planning. That happens at the level of whole school, departments, and teachers. Then we have what is provided actually in lessons, the cut and thrust of what happens on a day-to-day, even minute by minute case with our students in their actual lessons. And then we have the extracurricular provision that kind of sits on top of all of that and is probably the things that you see most often, but isn't the bedrock of what we do. So let me begin with curriculum and planning. And hopefully you'll be able to see that up on your screen in just a second. So as I said, curriculum and planning is what happens at the level of whole school, but also departments. Every single department has schemes of learning that students follow throughout their time in that subject, and they vary from half term to half term. Those schemes of learning are built into what the students do. We're on the next one over now. Thank you. In terms of our more able students particularly, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years drawing content down from A-levels and GCSEs and embedding it within our Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 curriculum. This is part of how we stretch and plan to stretch students in every lesson. Some students are grouped in certain subjects, and you'll be able to see that. We have X and Y bands, for example. We've got slightly different groupings depending on the subjects that you're in. So if your student is in Key Stage 4, you may see a kind of X band or a Y band, and some of them are mixed ability, some are set by ability, and there are alterations as well that happen across the year. Depending on the class that students are in, they may get access to a slightly different curricular path. So for example, some students will study Latin at Key Stage 3, some will study philosophy, and these are things we know can help develop and expand students' cultural capital, as well as their understanding of the ancient world and how that can apply to the modern world around them as well. In the sixth form, we also have something called the Honours Pathway, which is the pathway that enables our most able students who did exceptionally well at GCSE to move through to doing 4 A-levels and being put through to our Oxbridge preparation programme, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And there are some students who, who are encouraged to select certain A-levels based on the things that they'd like to do at university or the type of university that they want to go to. Particularly at the top end, we do have students where the subjects they take at A-level may actually impact the degree choice that they make. So we advise all of that in the sixth form. And part of our sixth form provision, but also drawn down for younger students as well, is this idea of big ideas or threshold concepts. And again, this is built into the very work that students are doing with their teachers in lessons. Some of it's metacognitive. I'll talk a bit more about that one in a second as well. So that's sort of how we plan at school level, and lots of students don't see that necessarily. It's built into department meetings. It's part of the discussion about what teachers choose to deliver. But what students do see, of course, is what does happen in lessons. So it's they may not be aware of it all the time, but it's definitely there. And all of our teachers are trained in how to deliver excellent pedagogy in the classroom. And this supports all students. But there are some that may benefit from these particular things as well. So, for example, you may find that pace in lessons is used to challenge or to stretch. Our staff are incredibly well versed in questioning, and you can spend whole modules of a master's degree looking at questioning in classrooms, and our staff know how to utilise that really well. Some of them are large, big open questions. Some are tight and very focused, closed questions. And in terms of tasks, students who are more able may find that they're asked to do slightly different tasks. It may be asked that they're asked to do tasks in shorter times. It may be that the outcome of their tasks are slightly different. And again, they may or may not be aware of this, depending on the class that they're in and the teacher that they're with and the content that's being covered. Equally, every single lesson that you walk into in St. Michael's, there will be a visible challenge on the board or on the sheet in front of them. And we've spent a lot of time as a staff developing this. And that may be a challenge concept, it may be a challenge question, it may be a challenge activity, but every single lesson you go into at any stage, you should be able to ask any child and then be able to tell you what the challenge is for that lesson. And also built into this, and this crosses over with some more of our whole school provision, is that we explicitly teach metacognitive strategies. Again, these are not just applicable to our most able students. They benefit everyone, but particularly our more able, we find are particularly well suited to picking them up and running with them. So we have external programs that help teach metacognition. We do it through our form time provision but also our staff use it in lessons. So they may draw attention to the fact that they are summarising or evaluating or labelling or highlighting. And our curriculum evenings with parents have shown them how they can keep an eye out for this sort of thing as well. So that's at the level of things happening in lessons. And then we come to the things that St. Michael's do that are really just sort of the icing on the cake, but they do tend to be the things that are most obvious and more public facing, which is our extracurricular provision. And And I'd quite like to say now that we're incredibly confident about our provision for our more able students. If none of these extracurricular things happened, our students would still be getting an excellent deal, because everything that is planned and everything that is delivered in every single lesson is tailored for them. However, we can't deny that this could be seen as the fun stuff. And certainly there are things here that students purport to enjoy immensely. And this is just a small selection. I'm afraid one slide wasn't big enough to even begin to cover all of the things that we do. Again, not just for our more able, but for other students as well. But we do find that more able students often engage really well with these things, and can be more inclined to get involved with them and can be stretched by them. So the King's Scholars that you can see there on the left-hand side is a program that we run with King's University. It's been developed partly through their educational research and metacognition unit and cognitive science unit, where people from King's come in and work with our students, our most able students who are in receipt of pupil premium funding, and they work on metacognitive strategies and embedding those into their lessons and their learning, both in school but also while they're at home. It's a 3-year programme. It involves trips to King's College and is very much focused on perhaps getting students who wouldn't consider university to consider university. The Brilliant Scholars is a completely different organisation. They are a national charity. They are run all across the UK, where the very able students work with a PhD candidate in their particular field. The programme involves 2 trips to Russell Group universities, very intense, detailed seminar-style work with a PhD student, and a university-style essay at the end of it, and a university-style mini-graduation at the end of the programme as well. It's a really, really brilliant, excuse me, really, excuse me. It's a really brilliant programme. Oh, forgive me. Oh, my apologies. We also got the Bloomberg programme, which is specifically for our more able linguists, that happens in collaboration with Bloomberg in the city. We run house competitions that run multiple times across a half term in languages, in history debates, in spelling bees, in sports, in music, in drama. And you can see there that the music department, the drama department, and the sports team run various sorts of activities across the year. They are a phenomenal set of people, and we do have national and international level athletes and competitors in most of those areas. We also have, I mentioned earlier that the honours pathway in the sixth form allows our most able students from GCSE who attained particularly highly at GCSE to come into a designated pathway in the sixth form where they complete 4 A levels and the EPQ, the extended professional qualification. The Elephant Group is a small group of students in the sixth form that have been earmarked as potentials for Oxbridge or other elite universities if they're interested in going, and are trained with various different provisions to help them get there if they want to do that. Interview prep, trips, museums, talks, everything that you can think of that they will need, we help provide that. And of course, these sorts of students are exactly the ones who are our prefects and who help mentor our younger students as well. And all of that feeds in also to our Big Ideas lectures, which run every year, where we have external academics who come into school and deliver on their expert subjects as well. So hopefully what you can see from that is that provision for the more able doesn't really sit outside the things that we do for all of our students. We have an ethos here of high attainment, of high expectations. And yes, the extracurricular stuff is fantastic, but it really is built into the bread and butter of every single day and every single lesson for students. And that's really what we want you to take away from this today. If you do have questions, do put them in the chat. And that's sort of my bit talking to you done.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Ms. Casey. Welcome, parents, carers, and prospective students. I'm Mr. Daly. I'm one of the assistant principals, and I'm kind of overseeing the whole virtual online curriculum, open evening and open days that you'll have the opportunity to watch over the course of this the coming week. Can I just remind you of this evening session, which is the key session with the head teacher. You'll hear a talk from the head teacher at 7 o'clock prompt, and then we've got various other things that you'll be able to tune into. You'll hear from our head boy, head girl. And thank you very much for that, Miss Casey. Just some questions that have come in from prospective parents. I'm going to post those. I'm going to put those on the banner at the bottom, so feel free to answer those in your own leisure.
How are students identified as more able in the college? That's a really, really good question. It partly depends on what your definition of more able is, and this has shifted kind of in the educational landscape across a number of years. Obviously, we follow DFE guidance, which honestly is a little scant on this, so we've developed other provision and policies ourselves. As far as St. Michael's goes, the initial groupings for students, so things like the places where students are put into ability sets or groups, tends to happen from a mixture of external data, so things like the the SATs tests. Some of it is internal data, things like CATS scores, and things like baseline testing that may not feel like a test at all because we try not to overwhelm students at the beginning of the year. And we compile a lot of that data initially in the initial couple of months of year 7. But things like the SATs tests, things like the CATS tests, and even baseline data we know is not entirely reliable on its own. So we do keep an eye on students and how they're doing. We do monitor them. And at the end of year 7, we take nominations from subject teachers in every single department. And they are all compiled by me and then shared across the staff. The students who appear to be outperforming age-related expectations across numerous subjects, they are shared with all staff. But if a department has nominated a student as being particularly able in their subject, then they plan for that into all of the lessons that they provide from that point forward. So even whether we as a whole school kind of recognize them as more able, which is a little problematic anyway, but even if we didn't, if a child has been nominated by a teacher, or maybe if a parent or a carer tells us about something like their sporting achievements, which are outside of school, all of that is compiled centrally. I hope that answers that question. What would I say are the biggest challenges for a more able student? Again, a really good question. I think there's no such thing as a standard more able student. Anyone who is a parent or carer will know that everybody has their own personality, their own quirks, their own foibles, their own subject enjoyments and challenges. So it's really difficult to answer that as far as more able students go. What I can say is that we tend to find that there are some students who sit in the very traditional more able category, the things that parents and carers might expect in terms of the behaviour from a more able student. They're bright and they're engaged, they answer things easily, they work quickly, they understand without issue, can often be very independent and self-directed in their learning and their curiosity. Equally, there is a subset of students known as more able underachievers. They may be perfectly bright and perfectly capable, but for example, don't want to engage with school or don't want to get on. And we've got certain strategies that we employ with those sorts of students that may be slightly different to your more traditionally more able student. Equally, we have those who demonstrate incredible potential in things like the CAT tests, but that never seems to manifest itself in any of their attainment. And again, there's a slightly different approach that we take with students like that. So in terms of challenges, it really depends on the student, but whatever their challenges are, we are there to support them. What other things can I do other than looking at their schoolwork to make sure that they're doing well? Oh, this is an excellent question. Thank you to whoever asked this one. We as a school are incredibly keen for parents and carers to know just how much impact you can have on the outcomes, the educational outcomes of your children. In our extensive knowledge as educators, then one of the things that makes the biggest difference is you showing an interest in their work. If you are asking to see their schoolwork, that's great. The interest that you show has much more positive impact above and beyond you actually looking at their work. That engagement with them and their learning has huge impact on their attainment emotionally, as well as in terms of hard grades. If you're looking for things specifically that you can do with them, what we tend to find is that we sometimes get students who have incredible intellectual potential, but they don't have a lot of life experience. We have students who live very nearby, but have never seen the river or have never gone into town or visited a museum or visited things that are maybe outside sort of the cultural life of their family and friends. So one of the things that we very strongly recommend is that you get them out into the world to experience as many different things as possible. It doesn't necessarily mean that leaving London. London is a fantastic place for expanding the horizons of young people. But that is what we would recommend. Yes, do look at their work, do ask them about their work, do engage them in discussion and debate. We find that keeping an eye on current affairs and discussing current affairs with your able young person is a good way to engage as well. But if possible, do get them out into the world to discover a little bit more about what's out there, rather than just the immediate vicinity of their family and friends. So the students, is again, great question. Thank you for that. Students who are deemed less able are still provided for, absolutely, by all of the things that I've just talked about there. We have designated provision for them. We have a really fantastic SEND team, and they will actually be presenting later on this week on exactly that. They will be running a live session like this one, but for less able students. So my remit today was to talk about the more able, which is why I'm banging on about it. But there will be another session for students who are deemed less able and the things that we specifically do for them. In terms of linguists' abilities, do we offer one MFL? Oh, again, great question. So yes, we offer one language in terms of formalized lessons that students take in classes, but we have so many fantastic students who are bilingual, trilingual, etc. We do provide the option for students to sit formal external qualifications in their home languages if their home language capacity is up to that. Have we got any more questions there? What percentage are more able? Again, a good question. It's a bit of a how long is a piece of string question. Initially, the DFE guidance said that schools should be looking to identify about 10% of its population. So with our population being at around just under 1,000, we're looking at something like 90 students. But honestly, I mean, I wouldn't want to be held to that. You know, we're not identifying someone if it sneaks us above a certain number. And equally, we're not going, you know, we won't identify students just for the sake of making up the numbers. So as a very general guideline, something like 10% of the school's population, but that shifts year on year depending on the students. Can a student who's not initially deemed more able become part of the cohort? I think it's important to say that this idea of a more able cohort is somewhat false. Yes, we do track and monitor a cohort. However, that doesn't mean that they necessarily get anything that's massively different to what every other student gets. If I direct you back to my presentation, provision for students is built into every single lesson that they get. That scheme of learning content, that's the pedagogy in the classroom, and then the extracurricular stuff layered on top of that. In terms of things like certain groups get Latin or certain groups get particular maths content because they're in a particular maths class, that's shiftable. So yes is the short answer to the question there. It is possible for a student to become to be identified as more able later on in their school career, later on in a school year, in the same way that it's possible that a student who previously showed incredible promise, but then who perhaps becomes disengaged. I mean, we have strategies for students like that, but equally it works both ways. So yes, is the short answer to the question. Is swimming one of the sports contemplated in more able sports? Literally anything. If your young person is a fantastic swimmer, yes, absolutely. We have, for example, a national ballroom dancer in our student cohort. We have Irish dancers. Do we have any swimmers? Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but almost any sport you could name, we've probably got a student who does it somewhere. We don't have swimming provision in school because we don't have a swimming pool, but that doesn't mean that they can't pursue their swimming outside of school, and for us to make provisions for that if necessary. And we have done that for some of our internationally competitive athletes and sports people here.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. I think a real good summary of how we support our more able students and the kind of projects that we have. I can see that some of the questions from parents are coming in are kind of more related to our admissions policy or other areas of the school. We will be dealing with those at various times. In the moment, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Ruggapooth, who's going to be just giving you a brief outline of the admissions policy. Later today, after the head teacher has spoken, she'll be doing another kind of session. And next Monday, if you're interested, there'll be a more in-depth session about the admissions policy. So please hold tight on those. I'm not ignoring those questions. We will get back to you and make sure that you tune in for next Monday session, where you'll be able to get all of those questions answered. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Ruggapooth, as I said now. Thank you very much, Ms. Casey,
no problem.
for answering all those questions. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Ruggapooth now, who's going to give you a brief outline, like I said, of the admissions policy. Thank you, Ms. Ruggapooth.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ms. Ruggapooth, one of the assistant principals here, and I sit on the admissions panel here at St Michael's as a teacher governor. So I want to give you a little bit of an insight into the admissions procedures, just so that you are not anxious about going through that. Maybe if it's the first time, or in cases like changes as well from when your last son or daughter applied. In terms of the admissions criteria, it is important that you do check the website for that information. So that you are aware of the oversubscription policy as well. Please be aware that the oversubscription policy is always put into place every year, because we have over 700 applications for only 150 places. So it's really, really important you do check that in your own time. As part of the process for admissions, there are a number of things that you need to do. One of the first things you need to do is complete the common application form. And it's important that you complete it based on where your child lives. So, for example, even though we are Southwark School, you must complete the form if you live in Tower Hamlets or Lambeth or Lewisham, etc. Please do complete that form. And if you just go to the next slide for me, you'll see that it's an e-application form, and those are all the different boroughs, and even another borough outside of those. That's what you complete it, even though our school is in Southwark. It is important with that application form that you do save. We've had some parents not do this. If you don't save it and send it off, that application isn't processed. And it is important that it is completed by the 31st of October. It is a Saturday, but that's the deadline date. Please be aware that on the form, you can make a number of applications or choices for your son or daughter. And it is important that you do complete more than just one school. And again, that is just in case you don't get your first choice when it comes to the school for your son or daughter. The next thing you need to do is complete our application form. Now, this is really important. And again, where some parents previously have fallen short of making the complete application process, as well as the common application form, which we just showed you, which is the an online form, and it has to be done online, you have to complete our application form. Now, our supplementary form this year, we are going to ask that you complete it online, and a link for that will be on the website for you to click and complete. It is a Google form, and it is the same as if information that is on the paper form. The paper form is available for you to download and complete, but we suggest you only do that if you really can't complete the online Google form. And the reason for that is obviously with these challenging times, we are trying to ensure that for your safety and the safety of the students at our school and staff, that we don't have too many people coming on site to complete forms. And bring them in. So the form that you can complete once you hit the button allows you to complete everything, but also upload information, because as part of the process and the application, you do need to give us proof of baptism and proof of address. So all of that information can be uploaded onto the form. So again, please look at that and do click on. The final thing that you need to complete is the priest form. Now, the priest form is important because we are a Catholic school and we do ask for proof of mass attendance. If you look at our applications and the admissions criteria, the majority of our students are baptised Catholic students that do come to us. And like I said, we need proof of that. Now, I am aware that obviously Mass has been since March, has not been taking place. And if you have a look at the addendum that we've added to our admissions policy, it does take into account the fact that the congregations will be looking into the fact that even though we haven't had Mass, that they will priests will have deemed this time as part of the 3 years as well. So do be aware of that in case you're worried that would have an impact on applications. In terms of that, we ask that your son or daughter has attended Mass for 3 years in terms of the application that needs to be collected in. Now, one thing I would say about the priest form is if you give a copy of the priest form to your priest, they will send that back to us and get that information to us. I would suggest putting a picture of yourself and the family just to, jog the memory of the priest, because often priests might know your son or daughter by a pet name, not necessarily by their official name. So it's always quite a good little tip to do that. And the reason I say also put the family, because obviously, you haven't been in for a while. And again, it's just to jog the memory of your parish priest, and a really useful thing for them to see. If, for example, your son or daughter goes to a church one week, maybe with you, but maybe another week with a grandparent because you're working, I would always suggest that you photocopy the priest form and give it to both priests of the parish that your child goes to. And again, that just covers all the mass attendance for your child, and it won't show that there's a week missing or anything like that. And again, really important for that to happen. So just to summarise, really important that you complete the common application form, and that is attached to your borough, that you complete our application form. And for this year, please do that online using the Google form link that will be on the website, that you complete the priest form, and that you also upload the proof of baptism and any other evidence and proof of address as well. And in terms of the baptismal form, if you have lost it, you can contact your parish priest of where your child was baptised, and they can get you a copy of that. Please check the admissions policy just to make sure that you are, you do fit into that, because I know there are lots of queries about if you're not Catholic, etc., and it will show you where in the admissions policy your child may fall if it's your prerogative to still apply. All application deadlines, and that is for our form as well as the common application form, is the 31st of October. We've kept our date in line with the common application form. It is important that both forms are completed. If you only complete one and not the other, it is not a complete application, and that can have an impact on a place for your son or daughter. If there are any other questions, I will take them now, but I know that I'm on again this evening as well as next Monday too.
Thank you, Ms. Ruggerputh. Thanks for that overview of the admissions policy. As Ms. Ruggerputh said, she's on again this evening and again on the 5th of October for any parents, carers that joined us late. I'm just going to briefly, I can see some questions coming in from you parents, carers. I'm just going to take a few of the more kind of relevant ones, just perhaps you maybe find it difficult to kind of navigate through all the paperwork. Ms. Ruggerputh, so if someone, for instance, is Church of England, would their application be considered by our college?
Obviously, it's the prerogative of parents and children to apply to us. For the 150 students of places that we had last year, like I said, we had over 700 applications, and the students did this year, they were all Catholic students. Obviously, I can't say don't bother applying if you're not Catholic, because we never know how many baptised Catholic students from feeder schools, etc., will apply for that cohort. And sometimes students can be lucky. So it is, like I said, do check the policy, but it's not always a guaranteed place. And we don't, I know some parents have thought that, we have to take 10% non-Catholics or things like that. That's not the policy for our college.
Perfect. Thanks, Ms. Ruggerputh. And just to make very clear, how do parents, how are they able to kind of get the application form? What are the processes?
Of course. So the common application form, or CAF, as it's also called, is an e-form. And parents, you need to go onto the website of your local council. You'll know what it is because it's the bins. If you check your bins, you know which council you belong to. And if you go onto that and you click on, it's an e-form, like I said, you can pause it and go back to the form. So again, that's a great thing for you to do if you want to finalize your checks. But again, I will make it clear, you must press save and send once you are completely confirmed with your choices. And I'll remind you, don't just put one school, do put a number of schools that you would be happy for your son and daughter to go to. Really important with that, don't just randomly pick schools, because if you're not successful in your first choice, you will just be given what is next on your choices. And they do ask you to put the choices in from first to second to third, etc. So that's a common application form. Our application form is a Google form, and the link for that will be on the website, Mr. Daly. So once you look into the admissions and you click it, it will produce the online form. You don't have to complete that Google form plus the paper copy. You can do either or.
Perfect. And that will be available?
That will be available from tomorrow.
From tomorrow. So parents can log on and fill in that Google form when they've got time. That's perfect.
But the deadline for both is the 31st of October.
31st, so they've still got plenty of time in order
Lots
to.
of time, yes.
So,
The common application form is already open, but our forms will be available from tomorrow after tonight's speech.
perfect. And I've just got another question. Is the CAF the same as the admission? Is that the same thing?
E-admissions is the same as the CAF, yes.
Perfect. And are feeder schools taken? Anyone that goes to a feeder school, children that go to a feeder school, are those
Yes.
given any kind of preference in terms of the application process?
Sorry, Mr. Daggy. So if you look in the, if parents look in the admissions policy, you'll have a list of the feeder schools. And in terms of the rank ordering, because we do, once all the applications come in, we do rank the student according to the policy, and it's done very fairly and consistently with that admissions policy in mind. And so if your child is from a feeder school, obviously that takes priority over a non-feeder school. And depending on the level of mass attendance as well. So
to just make very clear, so everything is done online or can be, except for the priest form.
Except for the priest form, which if parents give a copy to the priest, but they will send that back to us.
Perfect. I can just see one question coming in saying that will our presentations be available online? They will be, so these will be uploaded to our website shortly, so you'll be able to see all the information and read it in your own time. Thank you, Ms. Ruggerputh, for those questions. Parents, carers, I've just given you a brief overview. As I said, if you want more information tonight, Ms. Ruggerputh will do another session, but I would keenly suggest that you tune in next Monday, October the 5th at 10 o'clock. We've got a session that starts with myself. I'll be interviewing some of our Year 11 illustrious Year 11 prefects, and they'll be running through various areas of the school and giving their kind of opinions on how their schooling has been so far. And then there'll be a more in-depth session with Ms. Ruggerputh, where you can ask any outstanding questions that perhaps have not been answered today or this evening. Thank you very much to everybody. I hope that has given yourselves a better understanding of how our More Able policy works, and a brief introduction to the admissions policy. We look forward to seeing you this evening, where you'll be hearing a more in-depth talk from the head teacher, and as I said, various other things that will be happening this evening. So please make sure that you tune in then. And if you've got any other questions that have not been answered, please feel free to email us on contact@St Michael's College. That's contact@stmichaelscollege.org.uk, and we'll get back with responses as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing some of you this evening.